Welcome to the Dirty Verdict Podcast, where your hosts, trial lawyers Kyle Herbert and Bill Ogden, and mediator Peter Taff, talk with interesting lawyers and break down recent legal news in detail. Here's Kyle, Bill, and Peter.
Welcome back to the Dirty Verdict. We're here today with a special guest in addition to our normals, Peter and Bill, to the extent you can call them normal.
Hello.
Yep. We've got Paul Skrabanek with us with the firm of Skrabanek right here in Houston, Texas. Paul, we wanted to start out talking with you about a case you recently filed that is real serious. We try to have a good time and joke around a bit here at the Dirty Verdict, but this is a pretty terrible story, and we wanted to go through some of the basic facts and the theories you've got about this case. It's a case against Arby's. Why don't you tell us about it?
Sure. So I represent a really lovely family that's here in Houston. It's the Lee family. It's an Asian family here in Houston. There are 4 children. They range in age from twins at 25 all the way to 41 years old. And their mother, Miss Lee, was a general manager at Arby's here in Houston, Texas. And sometime in February of this year was asked by her boss in corporate at her company called Turbo Restaurants to go over and take a temporary assignment in New Iberia, Louisiana, to help turn around a restaurant that was kind of flailing.
Where is Arby's based? Or are they all franchised out all over the world?
So it varies. So you've got some corporate stores, and Arby's corporate's based out of Atlanta, Georgia. And then the franchise that we're dealing with in this case is called Turbo Restaurants, based out of Dallas, Texas. And its parent company is called Sun Holdings, also based out of Dallas.
So tell us what happened to Miss Lee.
Well, Miss Lee, what she got sent over on the temporary assignment was in New Iberia from late February till May of 2023 this year. So she takes the temporary assignment, and she's over probably 13, 14 employees in the New Iberia location. And to skip kind of the end, what happens is she gets trapped into a freezer in May of this year, and nobody else can get to her, and ultimately freezes to death over about 6 hours.
Jesus Christ.
That's terrible. So some nuts and bolts for the lawyer crowd. The injury happened in Louisiana.
Right.
But you filed suit here is it in Houston?
We did, because the focus of their relationship between Miss Lee and Turbo Restaurants is here in Houston. The assignment came out of here, and she was covered under Texas workers' comp. I mean, they've even reached out to talk about that.
So they've asserted the comp bar arising out of the employment relationship in Texas.
They haven't asserted a comp bar yet, but... So we had a gross negligence case.
Right, so they're going to give her the comp benefits based out of her Texas employment.
And I'm not taking those yet because we're just have to pay them back ultimately, right? So we're not taking them yet. They've reached out, but that's just more proof that they can't move us to Louisiana. And Turbo's answered already, hadn't moved to change venue, hadn't sought forum non in their answer.
Who's your judge?
Judge Hawkins.
Okay.
And who represents Turbo?
Chambly Ryan out of Dallas.
Got it. Tell me, what's your theory to keep it here in Texas other than the nexus of her employment, or is that it?
That's it, and I don't think they're going to challenge it. From what I understand, because I'm licensed in Louisiana as well, New Iberia is a pretty bad venue for defendants, so I don't know that they necessarily want it there, and it's in front of everyone over there in Lafayette and New Iberia. It's in the news probably once a week. I get contacted by the news over there to talk about the case and what's going on in the lawsuit now.
So we talked about this case a little bit. This is the one where she was like beating on the door forever trying to get help.
Yeah, so I kind of skipped over some of those facts because this is all the stuff we learned after the fact. So here are the things that will just simply make you furious when you hear about it. Once we get the case, we start hearing from all of these employees that are no longer employees at that Arby's, because what happens once Miss Lee is found dead in the freezer, they shut that location down. And rather than tell any of these employees, hey, we're shutting down, they just stop calling them. So these people are showing up to work. They weren't paid for the last 2 to 3 weeks that they were there. These people are all asking me questions now about, hey, do you know a lawyer that can help us bring a case because Arby's didn't pay us? They just fumbled as bad as you can handling the fallout of this case with these employees. So they're all now talking to me.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Here's what we know. In talking to every one of these people, including general managers before Miss Lee, the latch on that freezer had been broken since August of 2022. So you got August 2022, our accidents in May of 2023. Okay, so you've got that. Well, Turbo says, well, wait, we didn't know about that. We're in Dallas or we're in Texas. No, the general manager in charge of sending Miss Lee from Texas to Louisiana on the temporary assignment is also from here. He had been through that location 3 times before May, before our incident, and seen that latch and had at least 2 to 3 employees at that Arby's in that New Iberia location tell him there is something wrong with this latch. We all get caught in here. We have to bang, and somebody has to come let us out. Not only that, we've had break-ins here, robberies here. The door's broken in the back. We need you to fix that. And he says, we'll get to it.
So you have a gross negligence claim in writing from the defense. Sounds like documented.
Yeah, we have literally pages of text messages from these former employees to this management level guy, the general manager, basically. And not a one of them is responded to. I scrolled through these people's phones for 10 minutes. His name's Elijah Finster. Mr. Finster, these folks broke into the store last night. The door's broken. What do we do? No response. Mr. Finster, the freezer's broken. Can you send someone out? No response. Thing after thing after thing. And it's all based in Texas, right? Elijah Finster's here.
So I don't know how the walk-in freezer works. There's a latch, I guess, that only opens from the outside.
So I'll explain that to you. So in your head, just picture on the outside, when you walk up to this cooler, there is a dial on the left that tells you how cold it is. And just so that you understand, we're talking about minus 20 to minus 30 degrees. And then the latch on the outside is a horizontal silver latch that you would pull out,
Sure.
and it would open the door towards the outside. On the inside, it looks a lot different. It's basically a button attached to a stick that you would push into the door that's supposed to release that latch on the outside. And what we understand now, talking to these employees, and I'll get to when we inspected the thing here in a second, is that people would hit that button and it would basically do nothing but bounce back at you and not affect the latch whatsoever. To make things even worse, before the Arby's was there, the Arby's opened in January of 2021. Before Arby's, there was a Captain. You remember Captain D's?
Of course.
There was a Captain D's there, and Captain D's, they had the same freezer set up, but they had a lever in the corner of the freezer that you could pull that would alert authorities. Then they would automatically know, hey, somebody's stuck in this freezer. We got to go down there and get them. So guess what Arby's didn't do when they took over this location? The most basic thing you could do, which is hook that to the phone system. They had no working phones at this Arby's from January of 2021 through May of 2023.
So no working phone at all.
Right.
Do you have a products case there for the design on the inside? Why is the inside different than the outside?
So I've got an expert looking into it, and he says to me preliminarily, and we'll look at all angles of this, but that preliminarily it's designed right. It's just wear and tear that it broke down, and they just didn't fix it.
A maintenance issue.
And then how do you argue against, Captain D's had a working system. Arby's, why don't you have a working system? All you had to do was hook the phone line up. And by the way, when we did the inspection, the wires are hanging out of the wall on that lever, that emergency lever. So either Miss Lee pulled it out in a panic or it had been like that beforehand.
So the background on her being assigned over from Houston and New Iberia location, how did that come about?
So she's a reliable employee. People liked her. And the general manager, this Elijah Finster that I've mentioned, came to her one day and said, hey, you do a real good job for us. We're really having a problem over here in New Iberia. Can you just, for 4 weeks, we'll put you up in a hotel or apartment, whatever they did. Yeah. Can you and your son, because he was also a general manager with her, go over to New Iberia and help us get this store working right? From what I understand from talking to these former employees, they were doing about $9,000 a week at this Arby's. And Miss Lee, by the time that she had done her work there, had gotten up to about $15,000.
Just to follow up real quick, what was as far as struggling, how was it struggling? Was it theft, or you had employees, or what?
A bit of both of that, actually. So you had a general manager that was bringing her infant and toddler to work every day and setting up a playpen in the dining area and asking the other employees to watch her child. And then I haven't tracked this general manager that I'm talking about with the toddler down yet, but allegedly she took another job at another Arby's franchise now currently. And so I'm dubious about whether I can talk to her ethically. But it's my understanding that she had some scheme set up too, where she may have been taking money out of the till with her boyfriend. We heard some crazy stories from these employees about the boyfriend coming in and like exposing himself. It's stuff that you just can't imagine.
I was going to pitch a reality show to Netflix on following around Arby's employees, so I can imagine it's pretty interesting stuff.
Someone's already on it.
Yeah, fair
As soon as this hits.
So before we move on to other topics, tell us briefly, how was this all uncovered? I mean, how was she found? How did that all come about?
So I kind of mentioned that her son worked with her, and I hesitate to say that her son has special needs because he's not specifically diagnosed yet, but this is kind of a proud family where Miss Lee always took care of her oldest son, who's 41 years old. His name is Wen Lee. And Wen, if you talk to his sisters, is probably autistic. He always relied on Miss Lee. He always lived with her, and he always worked the same jobs as her. She just basically took care of him. And so he was over there on the assignment with her. And what happened was Miss Lee goes in sometime 9:30 on the date of the incident and gets trapped into the freezer. Well, Arby...
AM or PM?
AM. Arby's doesn't give out keys to all the lower level cashiers and cooks and everything like that. So you have folks start showing up at 10 a.m. or so to come to work, and they can't get into the store. And Miss Lee's phone's on the counter. And so they're calling and thinking, what's going on here? Is the store closed today? And so they just end up going home. And so sometime later in the afternoon, management calls her son, Wen, and says, there's got something going on at the restaurant. We're registering 0 sales today. Can you go figure out what's going on? And so Wen actually is the one who finds his mom frozen face first down in the freezer that day.
Who are your wrongful death beneficiaries?
So Wen, who's her 41-year-old son, Tiffany, who is her 30-year-old daughter. She's married and has 2 children. And then she has twin daughters that are 25. They're both chemical engineers, graduates of Texas A&M.
Oh, brutal. Well, good work bringing that case. I hope you get some justice for this family. And thanks for sharing with us about it.
Thanks for bringing light on it.
Sure. All right. With that, we will move on to much lighter fare. So normally the way this works is we'll talk a little bit about your background and tell us about Paul Skrabanek. Paul, where are you from?
Born and raised in Tomball, Texas.
Tomball, Jimmy Butler, Jimmy Buckets.
Amazing.
Jimmy Butler's from Tomball?
Yeah. Is this class 2005?
I've heard some story. He was adopted or brought in by some family that kind of raised him.
That's my understanding as well.
It's slipping the name is slipping my mind at the moment, but he played at North Carolina and went on to play in the pros too. Is also a Tomball native.
Now,
Justin Jackson.
It's my understanding you love the University of North Carolina.
No, not at all.
So, University of Houston undergrad?
University of Houston undergrad, South Texas Law School.
Huge Duke fan.
Yes, monster Duke fan. People ask me this all the time. Why U of H has the #1 team in the country last year. What in the world are you doing following the Duke Blue Devils? I was a basketball fan before I went to college. So 10 years old, and you got Grant Hill, Bobby Hurley, and Christian Laettner tearing up the scene, winning national championships back-to-back, and that, as a 10-year-old, just captivates you. And I've been a Duke fan ever since.
I mean, I don't know if I would say Christian Laettner captivates me, but the other two do. So I get that.
No, they were the team that everyone, there's a whole documentary on.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I'm just saying, he's very easy to not like.
Christian's exactly the kind of guy you would imagine. I've run into him. And when I think it was UConn and Butler game here in 2011, and they played at the Dome or the Reliant. I ran into Hurley and Laettner at a bar downtown, and so
you're stalking them, right?
Yeah, no, my buddy saw us. You got to get down here right now. Hurley and Laettner are sitting over here, And I said, I'll be right down. So I come up to the table and I said, hey, Bobby, big fan. Do you mind taking a picture, you and Christian? And Bobby pops right up and says, oh, absolutely, for sure. And Christian's kind of sitting there, kind of rolling his eyes, shaking his shoulders. And Bobby goes, get up, Christian, take the picture. And so as soon as we take the picture, he looks over at me, he goes, now go post that on your Facebook.
Which she did.
And I just, that's,
You're like, Christian Leitner's a real sweet fella.
it goes, exhibit A on my Christian Leitner stance.
Yeah.
So you go from U of H undergrad to U of H law school?
So there's a
Even better.
stop, there's a stop in between. So you worked for, you did campaigns and
I
that.
did. So let's start in 2003, right? So I graduated in U of H in 2003, undergrad in physics and one in physics and one in poli-sci, and decide that I'm going to go into politics for some reason, and was campaign manager for Jeff Daley for city council, and that's back in 2003. And the person that actually won that race that year was Pam Holm. I don't remember her. She beat us by 24 votes. And so I remember sitting across the table at a recount due to this, and I know y'all know Chuck Holm, the lawyer, sitting across the table as somebody that had just come out of undergrad, having to scream and holler at Chuck Holm over what this circle meant or that circle meant on a mail-in ballot.
That's brutal.
That's why we should not have mail-in ballots.
Yeah.
Kidding, by the way.
And so there were two, or there were more than one campaign?
Did three. So Jeff Daley for city council was one. We lost that one by 24 votes. The second one at the time was the most expensive Republican primary in U.S. history. I worked for Ben Strusan and is his grassroots director, and we ran against Mike McCall, and who's now the sitting, interesting story about Mike McCall, doesn't have two nickels to rub together back then, is now the richest congressman in Congress. But so Strusan...
Look, if you're not willing to grift a little bit, do you really even belong in?
No, well, he's actually a friend of mine, and my congressman in Austin, and his wife is from a very wealthy family. So Michael's always been a public servant. He's a prosecutor and worked for the AG. And
Yeah, I wasn't trying to.
yeah, I'm not implying. I didn't want you to imply that anything untoward.
If any of our sponsors,
No, I totally get politics, and I think he gets politics, but I just didn't want to let that.
we have a standing policy for any sponsors out there.
Yeah.
We will accept vacations, gifts of all sorts, but it will not impact our judgment. We all agree.
Yeah, we will not change. We have principles here, and we're going to shit on you regardless.
We will still accept your money. You can fly us on extravagant fishing trips. We'll do whatever you want. We'll do stuff.
I'm the Clarence Thomas of this group.
We'll do stuff.
He's the Scalia.
But it
San Alito here.
impact our judgment.
Yeah.
So how'd that election work out?
So Strusan won the general. So we had 10 people or so in that race at the beginning, and we ended up in a runoff with McCall. And we beat McCall, my memory is, pretty handily in the general. And then in the runoff, you get Kay Bailey. Corden was always an endorser of McCall. And then you get Kay Bailey, the Bush family and everybody else endorsed McCall, and he ran away on us in the runoff. He beat us bad. And then after that, went on to a proposition in Houston called Prop 2, which was to the rev cap, which was to cap city spending to inflation and population growth on a yearly basis. That's back when Bill White was mayor. He ran a competing proposition called Prop 1. I believe it's still being litigated in the courts about which one won. We both passed, and then it was White put a poison pill in his, says if we both pass, the one with the most votes wins. And I still think that it's still tied up in the courts.
How long ago was that?
2004.
And who would be paying to litigate that? Like,
Yeah, that's a good question.
So you want the names?
yeah. Is it private individuals or is it governmental?
Private individuals that you would know.
That
Politically active guys.
are they individuals that have something to gain depending on which one wins?
No, these are the good government guys. Yeah.
Is it a left and right kind of thing, or is it just people just got?
The city's still paying for Bill White's proposition, the litigation of that. The
taxpayers are?
Prop 2 is being paid for, like Bruce Hodes.
Huh. That guy's great.
You're thinking of Steve. Bruce.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Bruce is a good guy.
How do you guys know I'm being sarcastic when I say someone's great?
Voices, the big voices behind that were Paul Betancourt, Bruce Hotze, Jeff Daly, and then Al Hartman.
So why'd you get out of politics?
At some point, I said, if I'm going to get
Too much money. I'm going to be a PI lawyer. There's too much money.
if I'm going to be working 90 hours a week and making $2,500 a month, I want to do it where I could change the $2,500 a month part.
Okay. Fair.
So I had the similar calculation. I worked 1 year on Capitol Hill, but it was just like you have an inflection point where you're like, okay, I'm going in for life on this deal, or I need to do something different. I'm like you, I did.
Pete, do you still have some political aspirations?
No, absolutely not.
That's what I would say if I did.
Could you guys get me a job working for the military-industrial complex?
Which one? You have one.
Doesn't matter. Russians, Bulgarians,
Locking.
How about that's what you did on your off time?
settle down, Pete.
Yeah, just your 3 weeks you take off and you're not here, and we're not allowed to ask you where you are.
We could talk after this. I invested in a company a couple of years ago, and then that dividend exploded by an astronomical amount. And it's because Russia invaded Ukraine. And so I'm still trying to figure out if I'm a war profiteer, but we can talk after.
I'm almost certain you are, but
Not in another way.
but like a good one.
So we're on the right side of it.
So Paul, after you go to South Texas, do well there. What's your first stop in the law biz?
So during law school, I clerked for a firm called Bergen and Trophy. And I was one of these guys that, despite graduating 7th in the class or whatever, did 40 interviews in that 2006, 2007 time period. It was a bad time period for hiring. Did not have an offer. Interviewed at all the big firms.
Do you think it was a personality issue, maybe?
Could be. What kind of? I'll tell you. I'll give you a good example of that. This is my wife always tells me you were stupid on interviews. Fulbright callback. Go to lunch with some guys that went to UT, and I think they were playing Ohio State 06, 07.
Yep. In Austin, I think.
You talking about with Vince or the one with Colt? Colt's first year.
They did a home and an away, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the home was 05, and then, the game in Ohio was 05, and then 06 was in Austin.
So this must have been the 06 game. And that comes up at lunch, and I think I made some comment about, Ohio State's going to run away with this. I don't think that fellow liked that, and I did not hear from them again.
You're your audience.
You're right.
Honestly, that is one thing that should not cost you a job at a big firm. It's who you root for in a football game.
Yeah. Well, so anyhow, but
So
it worked out okay for you.
you did all the interviews, and I am still clerking at Bergen and Trophy during the bar. Third day of the bar, I get a call from one of my mentors, Jeff Seeley, that says, "Hey, there's some young guys over here downtown that broke off from Sussman Godfrey, and they're looking for young guys and they're looking for hungry guys, and why don't you come over here and just clerk? And when you get a job, you leave." And I said, "Sure. What are those guys up to?" And I go over, interview, and it's Arnold Nitkin. Interview there. I'm kind of a direct guy, as you can say, and they get into politics. They're big.
To be fair, also UT guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank God.
He learned his lesson on that Fulbright interview.
You're right.
Yeah.
UT sports did not come up in that interview, but what did come up was politics. And I think this was 08 by this time. So they were in the John Edwards camp back then, and I was in the John McCain camp. And I didn't hear from them after that for a little while. But then the third day of the bar comes. I'm kind of downtrodden, thinking, what am I going to do with my life? I've got $100,000 student loans. And I get a call from Jeff. He goes, "These guys like you. They want to try you out. Come over here and clerk. When you find a job, no hard feelings, and you can leave when you leave." And then I was there 7 years.
Did you like it?
I loved it. It was some of the great, those guys, you learn a lot there. Thrown into depositions 2 days into the job, trying a case within your first 6 months of being there. Just no better place for getting experience, for sure.
When they started, I think kind of like when I started, it was a lot of Jones Act offshore kind of stuff.
A ton of that. So a bunch of plane accidents, a bunch of Jones Act, a bunch of commercial vehicles, a bunch of mass incidents, things like that.
And then they had a huge verdict in like Hawaii, one of their first big ones. Were you involved in that?
No, that was before I got there. So in the cases I tried with those guys, We got a couple of $5 million verdicts, and then varying verdicts on my own of, multi-million dollars.
So 7 years there, and then you left?
So my law partner and I, Mike Pierce, left out of there in 2014, and we all personal injury practice since then, and we've part of the USC settlement here recently that you probably saw in the news. I think that's settled for $1.2 billion. We had about 100 of those cases. There's about 500 or 600 of those cases out there. And then also I was involved in that MGM shooting up in Vegas.
How many cases do you have in that?
About 102 or so.
Oh, so that's like almost, probably 9-10% of the docket?
I think there was 4,000.
Oh, I thought it was like 1,100.
It may be. I can't honestly
Okay.
And what was the first one you said?
USC.
Gymnastics, right?
Yes, it was the OB on campus there had been molesting women since the 80s.
Got it.
Some pretty graphic stuff.
Okay. Is there any other big ones, big cases you're involved in right now? Like mass tort, kind of like MGM and that
So we just got involved got involved last year in Lejeune, doing some of that.
With Lejeune, I feel like I just found out about it too late, and it was so expensive on the case acquisition. But from my understanding, the government's backing that, so it's an unlimited pot of money if you get them, right?
They've already set aside so many billion, and I think that you got Marco Rubio advocating to add to the pot every day. So,
which is what a conservative would do based on his principles.
Yeah,
I think at some point the folks that signed those cases up early are in a pretty good spot.
Oh, for sure.
It's my understanding that at some point the dollars chasing the acquisition of files just got a little bit out of control, and so I think the step signing it up later is problematic.
So there's two thoughts to it: is one, getting early and getting cheap, or two, wait until Daubert and summary judgment and then go pay 7x, but you're going to get paid because if you're past Daubert and MSJ, you're in the clear. That's kind of just how
Is there even a contested liability?
You still got to prove causation in these cases.
Yeah.
and you got to go through their rig process and nobody knows what's going on with that right now. And you don't know who's in charge and who's making the decision and what they're reviewing and what they think is important. But yeah, you got to prove causation.
Who's they in front of?
It's some federal judge in North Carolina, right?
It's North Carolina.
Yeah.
Because we got the PFAS got MDL'd into South Carolina. So I was just curious.
What's PFAS?
PFAS is the God molecule. It's what they put in fluoride firefighting foam.
Oh, that one.
And so, but there's a movie on it with Mark Ruffalo, an environmental defense lawyer in Cincinnati, I think. His hometown was one of the sites where it was invented, and DuPont and 3M invented it, but they didn't tell anybody, and so it wasn't on a hazard substance list for so long. And the problem with it is it never metabolizes.
What's it called, like Blackwater or something?
Blackwater, yeah. I believe, no, Blackwater I think is the one with SeaWorld, something like that.
That's Blackfish.
Black.
Yeah.
Then maybe it is Blackwater. It sounds.
I heard an interview with the actual guy that Ruffalo.
Yeah. So, but the problem is it never metabolizes. So once it's in your system, it's there forever. And there's in the ITC fire, we have a class action for the first responders because they dumped more foam in that instance than I think anywhere ever recorded, and nobody told any of the firefighters that. So they went to go. They didn't have the right PPP. All they had to do is tell them to put a respirator on. But you've got, just tons of it. There's pictures of the firefighters with it, foam 40 feet in the air, and they're standing in front of it. And my little brother's actually our class rep. And we sent off his blood. He gave a blood sample. You have to send it off to, there's 2 labs that can do it. And it's super expensive, but we did a couple of the firefighters and they all had elevated levels. So yeah, PFAS it's kind of the quiet one it's going through right now, but DuPont, 3M, there's a couple other manufacturers and distributors in there.
Paul, you got one of the more unique hobbies of the lawyers that we've interviewed. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your side gig?
Yeah. So it's called Super Happy Incredible Toys. I own a...
What does that stand for? Super and happy, incredible.
What do they call that? Where with the letters?
Is that an anagram?
Acronym. There you go. Acronym.
An acronym?
Shit.
Yeah. Super happy, incredible toys.
So I've been a collector my entire life, and It ranges from comic books to toys, to vintage toys, all that kind of stuff. And in probably 2013, I had a buddy that sold me toys, vintage toy. G.I. Joe is mainly what I'm into, that would sell me stuff. And he'd come to me and said, hey, I'm shuttering and I don't want to do this anymore. He was in an antique mall at Willcrest and I-10. I said, hey, man, do you just need some working capital to keep this open? I mean, what you do is cool. Everyone loves you. And he said, yeah, I need a little bit of investment, a little bit of business guidance. And I said, all right, I can probably do both of those. And so I bought half the business from him. He ends up going to Oklahoma and moving. And I am now, my business partner is an artist in town that we've run it since 2015 together. A pretty good artist in town named Juan Salazar.
So what do you do with is there an art component? Do you take the figures and convert it?
So we have a lot of his original art hanging in the store, but what we focus on in the store is mainly 70s, 80s, 90s action figures, vehicles, play sets, toys like that.
So you got Transformers?
Absolutely.
You got G.I. Joes?
G.I. Joes.
You have the G.I. Joes, like the big ones, and then also the little, like the more plasticky ones?
I would say 90% of it's the little ones. The big ones from the 60s we have less of because there's less people out there that collect those these days.
You have Steve Austin where you can look through his eye and he's got like a little
$1 million man.
Yeah.
Dude.
Do you have the G.I. Joe aircraft carrier?
We've got a couple of them.
Jeez.
What is the Steve Austin one that you can look through the eye? What does that one go for, roughly?
If you got the box with it, it's going to be $300 or so.
Nice.
So what's the most expensive? Two questions. What's the most expensive toy you currently own? What's the most expensive toy you've ever bought? And then I've got a third follow-up.
And what's your holy grail? That's a third.
That's it.
Yeah. All right. So most I've paid for a toy, and so we're talking about my personal collection now versus the store. So
Yeah,
I got
either one.
to distinguish between that, because at the store you probably paid a couple $1,000s here and there. Personal collection though, most I've ever paid is something called the He-Man Masters of the Universe Eternia. It's graded. It's in an acrylic box. It's a sealed box. It was $11,000.
And what did you get with that?
By the power of Grayskull.
What did you get? You got the He-Man, or did you get all the whole Skeletor? Okay.
It's one piece. It's a box about the size of this table. It was the play set with He-Man back then called Eternia.
See,
Did you open it and let your kids play with it?
It's in an acrylic box graded.
okay. So, and then what's the Holy Grail?
For me right now, it's something called the Robotech. So I'm working on a mission and a project right now. It's to, one, become the biggest, greatest toy collector.
Is that an acronym? Biggest, greatest toy collector?
I don't think so.
No, it's no shit.
BGTC is what they say in the biz.
I'm chasing down a couple of guys at the moment, but the kind of sub-project is to get the big box from every vintage toy line, meaning playset, vehicle, big box. So think USS Flag, think the Eternia from He-Man, I'm trying to think about something from the 70s, Flash Gordon, about
how about Star Wars? I mean, those were a big deal when I was a little kid.
Millennium Falcon, got that. So the grail right now is something called the SDF-1 Robotech playset, which probably nobody's heard of.
I know what Robotech is.
Yeah, but there are probably boxed ones of those on the planet, 10, 15. And for me to grab one of those right now, it'd probably cost $12,000 to $15,000.
Wow.
What is it when you need the Robotech what?
SDF-1 playset.
So you tell your kids when you buy them toys, the second they open them, they just cost you like 10 grand.
That's right. Well, Paul, to honor your presence here today, I wanted you to know I picked up a couple of things.
Don't show the bag, yeah.
We got you a G.I. Joe Cobra Commander.
Nice. Very nice.
Now, this was $19 at Target.
That's $19?
So I think this is vintage, man. This is sealed.
You guys know what we have to deal with Pete and the penny pinching?
Right?
Yeah.
Can we get a helmet cam, Pete? No, you cannot.
Nope.
Will you sign it?
Yeah. Of course I will. But the fun doesn't stop there, Paul. You've got the Cobra Commander, but despite what Pete says about being frugal, I picked up a couple of other things.
Does he need to sit on your lap and make a wish before he gets some more Christmas presents?
He's going to have to get in line.
I went ahead and picked up a from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh, good.
Here, that's
the new.
Pete.
Oh, thanks.
That's for Pete.
Do you remember
Well,
what happened to him?
Yeah,
He melted.
his face melted off.
Whole thing melted. Like
Yeah.
melted.
Face melting, but not like a really good.
But he did get to do one thing no one else in the world did, which is look at the ark. For one shining moment, he got to do something no one else could.
He was kind of in charge of the crew, as Pete is. So there you go.
Well, I've been meaning to carry a staff from now on. So
I voted against Pete, just for the record.
this is from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Well, I was going to get you a Ming the Merciless, but the only Ming they had to celebrate your facial hair, the only Ming they had was like $40.
Oh,
So instead, you are the Nazi guy who has his hand burned off.
Oh no, he just gets the thing burned in the.
Yeah, but
He grabs the
he's
thing.
super tight with Bella.
I think
So
he melts too, though.
that's for you.
At the end,
what?
I also got for Josh, our in studio tech. I got you Nazi mechanic. I got you German mechanic.
good.
It comes with a wrench. I was going to give this to Bill. He's sensitive about his hair. And German mechanic is bald. But this is for you, Josh.
But he also didn't have a shirt on, like some people on the Instagram these days.
Yeah, Kyle,
And then, of course, for myself, I went ahead and got
the coolest guy. he got the coolest.
myself Indiana Jones.
Yeah, it's a class.
I think kind of goes without saying. So,
Does he have a whip? Does it come with a whip?
it comes with a whip and a gun and a freaking machete.
Just like Kyle.
Yeah.
That's Temple of Doom, Indy, right?
It looks like Temple of Doom Indy, and he's got like a judo chop action in his wrist. So I'm excited about playing with this. I was going to get somebody short round, but
Oscar winner short round. As of last year.
I'm a lot of people say you remind me of a Nazi in a trench coat. So
The burned hand.
yeah, with a burned hand.
well, you
I
know
get
what?
that a lot.
I feel like you might be our most persuasive interviewer, and I think one of his best lines is, "We have ways of making."
Yeah, everyone's an egg, just got to be cracked.
That's right.
Do y'all have any of those Star Wars, like Luke Skywalker, where the saber comes out of his hand?
So, yeah, we have a bunch of those. And then the real rare ones of those are ones where it comes out and then there's a tip that comes out of that. Double telescoping Luke Skywalker.
Holy cow!
All right, turn it back to law. We can kind of round third. So for the lawyers that are listening who are at a firm that may be happy but want to go do something else, how did that go for you and Mike, when y'all were debating what to do? And then how was the first couple of years doing that? And would you recommend it, kind of thing?
Yeah, so if you can see what the folks that you do, or what's the folks that you work for do and how they do it, and kind of innovate on that and think that you can replicate it, then go do it. Take the risk while you're young is what I would say.
How old were you when you did it? 30?
34.
Okay.
Paul, I have got a couple of questions for you. This is our rapid fire round. I've not cleared these with the rest of the staff.
Okay.
Which I don't mind.
He's on the printer. I wonder what the heck was going on there.
Sheet's not going to be happy about things.
This is 10 questions, rapid fire. Some of these are repeats from other famous questionnaires,
Lightning round.
but just kind of give us your first impression. All right, 10 questions with Paul Skrabanek, not cleared with the rest of the staff prior to presentation. All right, what is your favorite word, profane or otherwise?
Cocksucker.
That's 2 words, Paul.
You can hyphenate.
Yeah.
You can hyphenate.
I think you go straight across without even a hyphen.
I'm an expert in that entire field.
What is your least favorite word?
Jim.
GYM.
It's a JIM.
What sound or noise do you love?
That laughing goat cracks my kid and I up every time.
What sound or noise do you hate?
From Dumb and Dumber?
Yeah, okay. Yep.
If you were reincarnated as some other plant or animal, what would it be?
Freaking bald eagle, my friend. Because they're protected.
Amazing.
And majestic.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
So you got to rule out toy owner as well?
That's kind of already what you do.
All right. I would say archaeologist, since we're talking about Indy. I always kind of talk about that.
It's awesome. What profession would you not like to attempt?
Sanitation.
No, I was going to say defense lawyer, but yeah.
Same. What trait do you most admire in opposing counsel?
Aggressiveness.
What trait do you most admire in a judge?
Someone that is prepared.
What trait do you hope others see reflected in your work?
Preparedness as well.
Paul Skrabanek, we appreciate you spending some time with us. It was a delight to have you. Do you guys have any other questions for Paul?
No, thanks, Kyle, for that, bringing that little curveball.
I didn't mind it. It was actually like much more reasonable than I thought it would be.
Yeah, I was bracing myself.
There's a different version that we might employ at a later date, and certainly, well, maybe with friends and family.
Kyle rolls out the twister mat.
The limited distribution.
All right, Paul, thanks so much.
Thank you, fellas.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Paul.
All right.
Thanks for joining us this week. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also visit our website at www.dirtyverdict.com. If you are interested in coming on as a guest or have a story idea, please email us at story@dirtyverdict.com.